Are things likely to change as far as Saudi Arabia goes under the Biden administration?
Well, I think so, and that's what I argue in the article, that things are most likely to change, mainly because of Trump's ambition to run for a second term in 2024. And his personal and very close relationship with some of the leaders of some of the leaders in the Middle East, particularly in Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi. I argue that given those relationships and the intimate working relationships we've had, Trump is likely to continue having an influence on both Mohammed bin Zayed and Mohammed bin Salman. And Biden might be a bit wary into entering in an arrangement which is a close. So he might want to look at alternatives. And in this regard, I said that the only country that qualifies, it will be Qatar because of its history with at least the apparent promotion of democracy and freedom of media in that country. You know that the blockading nations consisting of Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Egypt insisted in Qatar to shut down Al Jazeera, and Qatar refused to do so. And the entire media fraternity joined in support of Qatar. So that alone kind of positions Qatar as one of the countries in the Middle East, or at least in the Gulf, that promotes freedom of expression, which is part of the overall democracy. So based on that, I really do think that Joe Biden will begin to look elsewhere in terms of his relations. Saudi Arabia has got a baggage, including the murder, which they later accepted, of Jamal Khashoggi inside the consulate in Istanbul. And of course, there's a continuation of basic violations of human rights in that country, with the arrest of many people who speak against the government, etc. So that's why I thought Biden might just change course.
Now, also, Ibrahim, looking at the damage that Donald Trump has done to the Middle East with the backup of Saudi Arabia, and looking at where Biden stands at this point in time, in terms of trying to reverse the situation or even remedy the damage that Donald Trump has done?
It's going to be a very hard task. But whether Biden is going to concentrate his foreign policy on Middle East or elsewhere, we'll have to wait and see. But regarding Middle East, still have to do quite a bit, particularly in trying to undo the so-called deal of the century, which was the deal that was achieved between not Palestinians, but between the Arabs led by Saudi Arabia, UAE, and others, and the Israelis. Countries like UAE and Bahrain went on to normalize relations with Israel. But the majority of the Palestinians, including the main factions inside Palestine, Fatah and Hamas, including Islamic Jihad as well, rejected the so-called the deal of the century. So that also will have to be undone. We know that some of the decisions that were part of the deal of the century are already afoot. And Bahrain, who's now very influential, particularly in Gaza, through figures such as Mohammed Dahlan, are already working with the Palestinians, those at least that sanctioned or supported the deal of the century in trying to implement some of the Trump's decision. So for Biden to come in at this stage, it will take a long time for him to reverse what Trump has done. But most importantly, it will also take him quite a while to convince those countries that support the deal of the century, particularly in Gaza and in the West Bank, to reverse some of the decisions that they've made. Overall, though, I think Biden has indicated that he will support any democratic initiatives in the region. So we will see him coming back and supporting anything that will support the democratization of the region. But it's going to be a steep hill for him, given what Trump has already done and given the emboldening of some of the dictators in the Middle East, particularly in Saudi Arabia, where Mohammed bin Salman was emboldened by Trump and given some sort of guarantees because of Trump's blind support into doing what he continues to do inside his country.
Yes, and obviously Qatar fits it well when we're talking about freedom of expression, when we're talking about democracy, and also in terms of Qatar, whether it can play a role as far as some of the other issues, like, for instance, the war in Yemen, the relationship or the engagements between Iran and Turkey with the United States. So I suppose these are all factors that are playing out in the background and in the mind of Joe Biden as well.
Yes, I think Qatar will be henceforth a political conduit between, on the one hand, Turkey and Iran and the U.S. Because, as I've said earlier, Biden will be a bit, careful in going full force, re-establishing relationships with Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. So he will certainly look at Qatar to establish those back channels, particularly with Iran, who we are told that they are going back to the joint comprehensive program of action, which was suspended under Trump. So Biden has said that we're going to resuscitate that. So Qatar will certainly play an important role. But at the same time, having said that, Qatar won't want to upset Saudi Arabia, because what pressured Qatar over the past years during the blockade was not necessarily the economic and the political pinch that it felt, but it was more from the people of Qatar, most of whom have relations across the borders into Saudi Arabia. So most of those people wanted to see those relations normalized. So, and they put pressure on Qatar. So Qatar will be very careful this time around not to once again offend its neighbors, particularly Saudi Arabia. So I've argued in other articles that the casualty in this regard, in terms of trying to preserve that relationship, might be Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera might be forced to tone down its coverage and criticism of both Saudi Arabia and its Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to be happening henceforth. But Qatar is surely going to be taking a center stage moving forward in terms of re-establishing relations between the Gulf region and the U.S.
Well, Ibrahim, we thank you as always. Jazakallah to you for your time with us here on Salam Media and your analysis. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Ibrahim Thembisa Fakude this morning about the relationship between the United States and the Gulf, and keep an eye on Qatar, and let's see what develops. We're going for an air break. Come back. We'll be talking about the Johannesburg High Court, which is set to hear an application that is brought by Freedom of Religion South Africa. We'll be talking with the Executive Director, Michael Swain.
Secure your very own copy of the Africa Muslims Agency 2021 Secular Islamic Calendar for just 70 Rand. This calendar has Salah times, the days of Ramadan, and essential Islamic information with a unique front cover, perfect for framing. Contact Africa Muslims Agency to secure your calendar. Call 011 834 8685. Africa Muslims Agency, inspiring the spirit of giving.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires